I'm Becky Kiser, Hayes Post Eagle Radio News reporter, and I'm talking with Stacy Campbell, Cottonwood Extension District agriculture agent, about sorghum headworm and wheat streak mosaic. It's all on this episode of the Hayes Post podcast.
The sorghum headworm is a little caterpillar, and basically it can be two different types of worms. It can be a corn earworm or a fall army worm, and basically they can eat on the grain. Right now, the window that they eat on the grain in the grain sorghum head is from flowering to soft dough stage, and that's where we're at. Once the grain does get past the soft dough stage, it gets too hard and they pretty much don't eat on it, really can't, and then they kind of have finished out their life cycle. But during that window, which is not a real wide window, at some years we can have higher populations of them out there feeding, and we're certainly seeing that this year. K-State's recommendation is for if you go out and scout the field, and we'll talk about that in just a minute, and you're averaging, for every one worm per head, you're averaging that's 5 bushels of yield. So, if you go out and scout your fields and you're averaging 2 worms per head, you're losing 10%. Now, as we were talking, the price is not good, but still, it can pay to treat. You're looking, I'm not going to say how much it costs to pay. You just need to call the aerial applicator. But it can pay to spray if you think you have, high enough populations out in your fields.
So what about scouting to see if you have those? How do you do that?
It is real easy. This particular insect is easy to scout for. Take you a clean, preferably white bucket. It seems like they're a little easier to see with a white bucket because they can be very tiny, and then once they get full grown, they can be an inch or an inch and a half. So, and right now, luckily, I'm still finding quite a few small worms. Once in a while, you find a bigger one. So, now's the time to be scouting and looking and deciding quickly if you want to spray or not, because like I say, that window is from flowering to soft dough, and depending on where your milo's at, it doesn't take very long for it to get past that soft dough stage. So take a white bucket out to the field, bend that head over into the bucket, pound that head up against the sides of the bucket several times, and then you looking for the little worms in the bottom. And like I say, sometimes they can be very tiny. The flowers from the sorghum will also be in there, the little red specks, and so you kind of got to shake the bucket around and look real closely, but it's easy to scout for. And I would suggest too, take you a little notepad and a pen, and keep track of how many heads you've checked and how many worms you've gotten. So then you can do an average. Are you averaging less than 1 worm per head, or more than 2 worms per head, or even 3 worms per head? And then and you need to ideally walk into the field, get out of the driveway of the field where the milo's never very good because of all the compaction there. Walk into the field a ways, walk around the field a ways. I would say sample at least 20 heads, and ideally it wouldn't hurt to do that in another location or 2 in the field. But even if you just do 20, 25 heads and walk around quite a bit, I think you'll get a pretty decent average of how many worms you have in the field. And like I say, for every 1 worm, you're losing 5% yield. So if you're averaging 2 worms per head, that's 10%. If you're averaging 3 worms per head, that's 15%. I was out yesterday and scouted some fields, and we're getting anywhere from about 1 3/4 worms per head up to 3 worms per head. And
what does 3/4 of a worm look like?
Well, the average came out to like 1.77 because I'm not good about remembering to take the little piece of paper and everything, but a farmer asked me to come out, and I did, and so we both were together. So he was carrying the bucket, and I had my little, it was just a small pad, but you can do it by yourself, and I was keeping track of how many heads versus how many worms, and then we did the quick math, and so yeah, we were 1 3/4 up to 3 worms per head per field. So I left it up to him what to do, but I think he was going to call the aerial applicator.
Is that the only way to put it? Does it have to be done aerial? You can go across
it with the ground rig of if you got a sprayer, but you're going to destroy. You're not going to take out a lot of milo, but you will take out some because you're driving over it. Okay, sure. So. But timing is very important. Right now it's too wet to get out there. So really, I think guys, if they want to do it, they need to call the applicator and get on the list. Happened to talk to him yesterday, and he was caught up because of this rain. But he'd, of course, running 140 miles an hour, they can cover a lot of acres real quickly. Yeah.
We also wanted to talk about, and we have talked about this several times in the last few months, about wheat streak mosaic and volunteer wheat. And
yes,
there's been a little bit of change in how we look at that, assess it.
Yeah, K-State has kind of changed their recommendations somewhat for that. It seems like every probably 10 years we get a blow up of wheat streak mosaic, and I think some of that is we're all human and we get a little relaxed and kind of forget, to maybe do our due diligence. So in the past, K-State was recommending, make sure all the wheat's dead 2 weeks before planting. Well, that sounds good. That is good. But planting for, can be, the planting window is about a month. In this area, it can start as early as about September 15th to about October 15th. So, that month-long window there, we have kind of backed up and said, let's try to get all of the wheat killed a month prior to the planting date. So ideally right now, we would like to see all the volunteer wheat dead, 1 month before that September 15th date. Okay. Just to give guys time to get it all killed, and realizing there's some that might plant earlier because they're going to graze it or whatever. So yeah, we've came up with this recommendation. We're calling it the wheat-free window, and we're suggesting a month before planting. And for this region, we have broken Kansas into different regions. It's that it's about that September 15th to October 15th time range. So back up a month and try to have everything killed. When you go into the Northwest, it's even like August 10th to September 10th. So, back up a month there for them to try to get all their volunteer controlled.
What's so bad about the volunteer wheat? Why do we need to get rid of it?
So the volunteer is the number one preferred host by the wheat curl mite. There are other host plants that it can survive on and reproduce on, but it does the best in wheat and prefers wheat. So we're trying to get rid of that host plant that it survives on and break what we call that green bridge, to where there's no volunteer wheat out there. And then the mites, yes, they can move to other plants, but they don't thrive and survive and reproduce near as much on those other host plants as they do wheat. So we can really lessen the amount of curl mites, or maybe even almost get rid of them. We're never going to get rid of all of them, and really reduce that chance of then the mite infecting the wheat plants, the new wheat plants coming up with that virus. Okay. And plus, the sooner that plant gets the virus, the more yield it takes. And we don't know if it gets the virus in the fall. The way wheat streak works is it really doesn't show itself till in the spring when it starts warming up. As it starts warming up, then those plants start turning more yellow, and that's when you start seeing it and realize you've got a problem. And obviously there's nothing you can do. It's a virus. That mite is not an insect. It's a mite. There's really not miticides out there to spray. Even if you did, it's not feasible to try to control them with a pesticide.
What about this weather? It's been cool and damp, and unusually so for this time of year. Is that affecting things? Well,
we were on a crop condition call yesterday. Every 2 weeks we have one. Everybody can jump on it from Extension, the agents, and some of our specialists are on there. And right now, in the southern part of the state where they grow cotton, there's some concern, because cotton really needs heat units, and Kansas is on that kind of border of do we have enough heat units or not for cotton? So, that's a concern, I think, with those folks. If you've got sorghum that was planted a little later, it needs quite a few heat units too. So, we do need some sunshine to come back out, right now. But I think overall in this area with sorghum, if you planted it in a timely manner and got it up, we should be okay. But I say that, who knows when the first freeze will be. It hinges so much on the weather down the road.
When is the average, do you know?
The average
for the first freeze?
Yeah, it's kind of about that, kind of that October 5th to 10th range, kind of a first frost, not maybe a hard killing freeze. Although, I think it's that October 5th to 10th range here. So it's kind of, sooner than what you realize.
Yeah, that's actually not that far off.
No, it's really not. Just a little over a month away.
Anything else we need to talk about today, Stacy?
That's kind of it. I mean, I guess one other thing is, grain marketing is always a challenge for guys, as for good reasons. The market fluctuates so much. But K-State does have a webinar that they do every month called Winning the Game Grain Marketing Webinar. It's free to jump onto that every month if you want to and listen to what our K-State grain marketing specialist has to say. And also a gentleman named Mark Nelson from Kansas Farm Bureau is always on there, and they kind of analyze where the grain market's at and what existing stocks of grain are and what's going on in the world as far as imports and exports and stuff like that. I guess like with so many things, the more information you have, maybe the more it can help. So that Winning the Game Grain Marketing webinar is every month. They just had it yesterday, but if you were interested in getting into those, you can just go to the K-State Extension Ag Economics website, which is the website address is www.agmanager.info. That's www.agmanager.info, and you can see where you can sign up for that. Actually, you can go ahead and sign up and get a weekly email from that website, and get some updates of what they have on there. And we don't share the emails with anybody, and it's real easy to do. It's a really, really good website. It's got information on custom rates, land rental values and arrangements, ag policy, farm bill, farm budgets. Very good website to once in a while look at anyway. So I would recommend guys get subscribed to it. That's www.agmanager.info. And if anybody's got questions on the headworm, give me a call at the office, 785-628-9430. That's 628-9430.